Syrian Girl is the 3rd of December. It's like every month it's the same in Syria, just the same news, the same drumbeat all the time. Is there anything new, anything changing in Syria?
Um, well, since we've talked last, I think very few things have changed. One thing is from outside of Syria, some of the countries that are have been arming the insurgency in Syria since the beginning have begun to just declare it more and more openly. For example, France and Britain have now, what's the word, acknowledged the new regime that they've organized in Qatar, which was when the Syrian National Council actually broke apart because of infighting. They got some new traitors together and set them up as a new government in exile, they call it, which is just a puppet regime that NATO is going to try to introduce into Syria if they succeed in bringing the current government down. So that's the fact that France and Britain has actually acknowledged them as the government in exile. That means that they are going to be more ready and open to arm them with better weapons. So that's one escalation that's happened. And on the inside Syria front, just recently, there was a big push by the army in Daraya, and I think what happened is that Daraya was surrounded and the insurgents were cut off on the inside. So they blocked off all exits. And I heard that 2,000 of them were killed. Also there was a airport attack on the airport, and the media. This was the time where there was an internet outage in Syria. The mainstream media started reporting that the airport was under the control of the insurgency, but then reports came out of Syria that the airport is running fine. They showed footage of planes landing and taking off, and there was an attack, but it was pushed back by the army. So on the other hand, there's still a lot of uh, cities that are under the control of the insurgency, and that would be in Idlib, which is around the outskirts of Aleppo. I think that's still infested. It's like the heart of it now. It moved from Bab Amr, which was the old heart, and that's kind of going along the plans that were laid out in the Brookings Institute report that was written before the whole problems in Syria began. And this was to sort of lay out the plan of how to destroy Syria. Finally, anything new to report? I know that you've already had a guest on to talk about this, and it would be that in Lebanon, one of the ministers inside Lebanese government, I believe his last name is Sucker, and he's part of the Future movement, which is against Syria, has actually been caught over a telephone conversation discussing moving arms into Syria to support the insurgency. So this is really what's been happening recently. There's
You,
been a few also suicide bombings in Homs in Syria.
I thought Al Akbar was not so pro-Syrian government, and yet it's Al Akbar that's publicizing this Lebanese conduit of weapons to Syria. Strange.
I think Al Akhbar has some very good journalists in it. One of them is Sharmeen Narwani. I believe she works there, and I'm not sure if she's a journalist but an analyst. So I wouldn't paint Al Akhbar as just the same as anti-Syria.
Thanks. I hear reports like sometimes the insurgents are taking over a military base. Are these all lies, or does it actually happen?
I think what's really happening is more of hit and run tactics. And when the media reports capture the base, they really mean like attack the base successfully and left, because they're not really, as guerrilla warfare goes, it's not usual that they would hold on to anything. And I know the report that you're talking about, and I do recall that I can't tell you exactly what's happening on the ground, obviously, I wish I knew absolutely the truth, but I do know that there was footage that was released of a helicopter base that was supposedly captured, but it did in fact turn out to be a helicopter graveyard that was filmed, and they were saying that they captured it. I think, according to me, I'm not absolutely certain, but as far as I know, that there was a base that was captured. I believe the 46th Regiment and some of the arms of the Syrian army were taken. So I think that Syria is the problem with the current situation in Syria is it seems like it's going to be perpetual. I know at the beginning everybody was saying, another year, another few months, and it'll be all over. But it's just looking more and more like Syria is facing an infinite attack of these mercenaries who are being paid from outside, and there's just no limit to how many extremists, Islamists, and mercenaries you can find to attack Syria, and they're getting better and better weapons. So, but Syria on its front it's holding very well because it's not falling for the psychological warfare that's being inflicted on it. There's no mass defection still. There's no fear that there's going to be a defeat. People are still believing in victory, and I think that's one of the biggest ways to succeed in war is by deception and by making your enemy feel like they're losing. That's how you basically win the war. And I think that the NATO powers have failed to make Syria believe their lies. And a part of that is saying just recently, Bashar is dead, or the government's just about to fall. And they always do this. Like every few months, you hear the government's just about to fall. It's all part of the psychological operation.
It's come to my understanding the power of the sanctions, how it's creating a lot of hardship amongst the population, and I should think, there's temptation under hardship. You've got to feed your family, and they're pumping money in on the FSA side. I mean, I should think a lot of people are being corrupted against their own will.
I think that the sanctions are a way to try to force people to defect and to accept mercenary money. I think that's definitely one of the reasons. Someone without a job, because the tourist sector is totally destroyed and they have a family to feed, of course they're going to find it more attractive. And of course, the whole situation would, some people will blame it on the government. They wouldn't realize it's coming from outside. So yes, on the other hand, Syria is getting still some help from Venezuela and Iran. I know that Venezuela provided some kerosene the last, or is it gasoline, the last winter, and they probably will again. So it's holding. Syria is holding, and I'd say it's still optimistic an outlook in spite of everything that the NATO powers have done.
And finally, I just mentioned that Putin is due to visit Turkey today to discuss Syria and no doubt these Patriot missiles. Where is Putin? What's he going to do?
I think I once said on your show many months ago that Russia looks after Russia. And I also discussed the fact that if Russia were to sell Syria out, then Syria would continue on the war front on its own. And I think everything I said there still stands. Syria has its capability to start a world war by herself. And I believe that's called the Samson option. So what Putin is doing there, perhaps he's trying to find the right price, because I think every nation has a price. Unfortunately, you have to be quite cynical in this, that if the harder Syria fights, the higher her price will be. And the lower she fights, the less she fights back, the less success she's having, then her allies will want to sell her out faster. So when it comes to Putin, hopefully Syria's price is high enough that the NATO powers are not willing to pay it. And I'm just assuming that his trip to Turkey is part of the negotiations
Well,
in regards to Syria.
hopefully he's threatening to give Syria super duper weapons if the Patriots are installed.
You know, that would be a great game to play if he did that, because it would definitely give Turkey, um, you know, a reason to. I think Patriot missiles in Turkey is going to not just be an offense against Syria, it's also definitely an offense against Russia. And hopefully that Putin and the Russian government have the foresight to see that not backing Syria now is going to eventually lead to their destruction.
Well, on that somber note, shall we finish?
Sure.